recorded, so it will be available after to be shared. I want to thank everybody for participating, the candidates for participating in this forum, for everyone who is watching the forum, and everybody that helped put it together. I want to thank the Glenn Dems, Julie Jordan, and Bonnie, and Renee, and the DPG for allowing the platform so that we can have these Zoom calls. So for some of you out there who aren't familiar with what a jungle primary is, we have an election coming up in November that is more than the primary or the general election for president. We have an election for U.S. Senator to fill the spot that is currently being held by Kelly Loeffler, that was vacated by Johnny Isakson. And the way a jungle primary works is that all of the candidates are on the same ballot. It doesn't matter what party they are. We currently have 21 candidates, 8 of them Democrats, that are running for this seat. We will vote in November, and if a candidate does not receive more than 50% of the vote, there will be a runoff in January of next year for the top 2 vote getters. So this is kind of a complicated process, but this is why we have so many candidates. Like I said, 21 candidates. And we wanted to put together this forum so you know who is running and what they stand for. Unfortunately, we don't have the time to ask a lot of questions or to allow people to ask their own questions, but we are asking 3 questions to get a feel for what the platforms are of each candidate and allowing them some time to tell us personally who they are and what they stand for. The format of this forum is that we will allow 4 minutes for opening statements. We will have 3 questions and allow 3 minutes per candidate per question, and then 2 minutes for a closing statement. And if we stay on time for each of those, this will be an hour and 45 minutes long. So with 6 candidates, we have a lot to get to. So we'll begin now after a statement from Julie Jordan, who will also explain a little bit about the timing.
Yeah, I just want to welcome all the candidates being here tonight and thank you for participating. I'm going to be in charge of keeping the time. So when it gets to 30 seconds left, I will go ahead and just say 30 seconds because you won't be able to see me hold up anything. And then when it's time to stop, I'll say stop. And if you keep going after that, Bonnie will shut your mic off. That is the timing situation. So I look forward to hearing from all of you tonight.
Okay, so we'll get started. We have 6 candidates tonight of the 8 Democratic candidates. We invited all to be here. Our candidates are Deborah Jackson, Jamesia James, Tamara Johnson-Shealey, Matt Lieberman, Ed Tarver, and Richard Dean Winfield. Sorry, doing that from memory. It's the end of the day. So those are our 6 candidates. What we will do is go through the order alphabetically, starting with Ms. Jackson, and then we will alternate to the next person to start. So we will begin with Ms. Jackson. If you would just tell us a little bit about who you are. We have 4 minutes for introductions.
All right, thank you so much, and good evening, everyone. Thank you to the representatives of the 1st Congressional District for holding this forum and providing an opportunity for us to present ourselves. As you heard, my name is Deborah Jackson, and I am the Democratic candidate for the U.S. Senate. I am a former mayor and council member and have experience working with all aspects of the community, from local faith leaders, from our students, and from people from all walks of life. As an elected official, I work to bring resources to the community, including our local schools, civic organizations, faith organizations, business groups, and just ordinary citizens. As your next U.S. Senator, I will work with Georgia to find solutions for the problems of unemployment, unaffordable health care, limited access to capital for small businesses, rising tuition costs, limited childcare options, a chaotic immigration system, climate change, public safety reform, racial justice, and threats to our basic right to vote. One might argue that these are a lot of issues, and you would be right. But these are things that are impacting people every day, and we must find a way of addressing them. I would argue that this upcoming election is about deciding the future of the country. So we need to have leaders that are prepared to address the needs of our senior citizens, children, family, small businesses, farmers, and just regular people. As you know, the pandemic has wreaked havoc on all of our lives, and it has been particularly devastating for our communities that have very limited resources. But this election represents an opportunity to address the glaring disparities that have been revealed as a result of the pandemic. We have known that there have been disparities all along, but now they've made crystal clear for anyone who's willing to see. It is important that everyone have a quality of life that is free from sickness, homelessness, hunger, unemployment, and all of the diseases that we are familiar with. We have an opportunity to develop bold initiatives that will fundamentally transform people's lives. We've witnessed the government acting in record time to allocate over $3 trillion in resources at the start of the pandemic. It has not been perfect, but it demonstrates what can be done. In closing, I would say that I am a proven leader. I have a solid record of accomplishments. The challenges that are facing our state, as well as the country, requires a representative who can hit the ground running on day one. Remember, my name is Deborah Jackson, and I look forward to sharing my views during this forum. And remember, I have the right experience to take on Washington. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Is Ms. James on the call? All right. Well, we have one candidate not on the call then. So we'll move on to Ms. Johnson-Shealey.
Right, well, good afternoon, Glenn County Democrats. You guys can hear me okay, right?
Yes.
Yes, awesome. Okay. Well, good afternoon, Glenn County Democrats, and thank you all for joining us tonight. I'm not going to take the full 4 minutes because I really want us to, I really would like to talk more about the issues. But I am Tamara Johnson-Shealey, your candidate for the United States Senate. So just a brief introduction. I am an activist. I fight for political and social change. My agenda includes economic, social, and environmental justice issues. I'm an advocate. I've been working for the last 18 years in the beauty and barber industry as a professional, but for the last 7 years, so 25 years total, I didn't want to quite tell my age, but for the last 7 years, I have been addressing policy nationally that affects the beauty and barber industry. I've been fighting for higher health and safety standards across the nation for the industry. And in this COVID season, I'm sure you guys can appreciate the fact that when you go to your salons and barbershops, some of you are feeling relatively safe. So we've been fighting for a long time before there was a pandemic to make sure that we have higher standards in the beauty and barber industry. I'm an author. I just completed my second book where I wrote specifically to beauty and barber professionals about how to maintain higher health and safety standards after this pandemic. I'm an entrepreneur. I owned my own business for a number of years in the beauty and barber industry. I just completed my master's degree from Emory University. I have a master's in law from Emory University. I just graduated this past June. I'm well equipped on the issues. My agenda includes establishing a federal agency for the American descendants of slavery, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that with the questions. Raising the federal minimum wage. I believe in Medicare for all, public education and higher education, and supporting that area. Climate justice and job creation, criminal justice reform, the revitalization of rural Georgia, restoring the Voting Rights Act. I believe in gun control laws. I do believe we should protect the Second Amendment, but we definitely have to have some safeguards in place to make sure that those who have guns, the guns are in the hands of the right people. I talk about a pathway to citizenship and making sure that our immigrant community is treated, they're treated respectfully in this country and they are able to become citizens. Women's rights, LGBTQ rights, and I have an agenda specific for the beauty and barber industry as well. So again, I am Tamara Johnson-Shealey, your candidate for the United States Senate. So thank you again, Greene County Democrats, for hosting this event.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson-Shealey. Mr. Lieberman.
Hey everyone, it's great to be a part of this first congressional district gathering virtually. I look forward to the day when we're able to join together in person again, but this will do for now. My name's Matt Lieberman. I was, I believe, the first candidate in this race, started all the way back in October, and I have been encouraged and gratified by a consistent, really positive response as demonstrated in polls that I tend to be the top choice, many undecided, but I tend to be the top choice of amongst the Democrats for this seat, and I know I can win it. Look, like most Georgians nowadays, and more of us overall, I'm a Georgian by choice. I've been here 15 years now. I am a lawyer by training, loved law school, but wanted to avoid being a lawyer, and I pretty much succeeded in that. First part of my career was in education for 15 years, running a program in the New Haven public schools up in Connecticut, where I lived before. And as a teacher, and that brought us to Georgia 15 years ago, where I was hired to be the principal of a Jewish elementary school with 450 kids, K through 8. And you know what? Although I grew up in politics, as many of you know, my dad's Joe Lieberman, and I helped on his campaigns, I really wasn't thinking about politics. You know, I've been an educator, I've been a small business person the last 10 years, I've been primary or solo dad for my parent, for my two daughters who are now 23 and 21. But I'll tell you what, the last few years, I think all of us have experienced have been so bad. You know, it's not like Congress has maybe ever been really hitting high water marks of effectiveness, but I don't think it has ever been this bad and really nauseatingly bad. And I'm at a basic level running as a fed up citizen of Georgia and for the fed up citizens of Georgia, because our government is broken in at least two ways. One, here in Georgia, we have been suffering with representatives, senators in Washington who at a basic level don't represent us. We need someone who will fight to expand Obamacare to include a public option, not try to end it. We need someone who will fight for common sense gun control, not be mute unless the NRA says they can speak. We need people who accept that humans have a role in climate change and need to lead the way in stopping it. We need people who understand there is a serious social justice deficit in our society that we need to address, and on and on and on and on. And the people we have, Kelly Loeffler, David Perdue, Doug Collins, they don't represent us just in a basic way, and we've got to fix that by electing a Democrat. The other way that things are broken is that nothing gets done, and that's because of the people who are there. Again, Kelly Loeffler, David Perdue, Mitch McConnell. We need to flip the Senate so we can get this agenda through. And what's more, we need to inaugurate a new era of what I think of as more patriotic politics, more patriotic spirit to our politics, where we try to find common ground to move our country forward. And let me just, last thing say, as many of you probably know, 30 seconds, thank you. And we can get back to this. After Charlottesville a few years ago, I wrote an anti-racism novel, but about racism largely, and about why are there people, racists, anti-Semites, bigots, still wound up with all this hate of others based on color of skin, how people pray. It's an anti-racism book, but it's about racists. It's about racism. It includes racists. the way forward does not include Democrats calling other Democrats racist, as supporters of Reverend Warnock have called me, of all things, for writing an anti-racism novel. Doesn't bother me because I know who I
Time's
am,
up, please.
but it bothers me as a citizen, though, and we can do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lieberman. Mr. Tarver.
Thank you. Good evening, First Congressional District of Georgia Democrats. Thank you for hosting this. I'm Ed Tarver. I'm also running for the U.S. Senate in the special election. I'm from Augusta, Georgia. My roots are firmly planted here in Georgia. My mother and father were born and raised right outside of Augusta in a little small community called Blythe, Georgia. I was not born in Georgia, but I was born while my father was serving our country in the military. My dad left the Georgia before his 17th birthday when he entered the Army after the death of his father. His father's passing resulted in the loss of the safety net for his family, and my father stepped in to fill the void left by the loss of his dad. There are a number of reasons why I'm in this race, and one of them stems back to the time that the reason that my father had to leave Georgia to go into the military. Back before even I was born, my grandfather died of an illness that was likely curable today. He was sick, working as an unskilled laborer in Jefferson County, Georgia, and became ill because of racism, because of segregation, because of lack of access. He was thrown into the back of a truck and had to be taken to Augusta to University Hospital for treatment. Unfortunately, by the time he arrived at the hospital, he had died. It's amazing to me that issues that happened back way before I was born, some 80 plus years ago, are still being struggled with today by our country. I believe that leadership is about experience. I believe that my record of service makes me uniquely qualified to represent Georgia in the U.S. Senate. Over the past 4 years, I've seen what happens. We've all seen what happens when we allow wealth and celebrity to determine who represents us in Washington. I believe that I have a proven record of public service, and I have always put Georgia and our country first. As many of you may know, I'm an Army veteran. I'm a former federal judicial law clerk. I'm also a former 3-term Georgia State Senator, and I was appointed by Barack Obama as the first Black American United States Attorney for the Southern District of Georgia. As you see, I've served in all 3 branches of government, and I have gotten the experience needed to represent Georgia now. After leaving the Department of Justice at the end of the Obama administration, I became a small business owner myself, starting my own law firm with a friend who is also a veteran. I am ready to represent Georgia and Washington starting day one. We cannot allow Georgia to be represented in the U.S. Senate by individuals who have personal commitments or private interests that conflict with the public interests of all Georgians. I look forward to sharing my vision for Georgia with you this evening. And again, I thank you for allowing me to participate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tarver. Mr. Winfield.
Oh, thank you. My name is Richard Dean Winfield. Greetings to all the Democrats of the 1st District. I have been, or I should say, I am the philosopher and union member who is running for the U.S. Senate. I have been thinking hard about truth and justice, working since 1982 as a professor of philosophy at the University of Georgia in Athens. I have 3 children who all went to the public schools. My wife, who is here listening, hails from India and has worked as a lawyer in defense of employee rights and currently as an immigration attorney. In 2018, I ran for the U.S. House of Representatives in my 10th district, and the nation called me the first candidate who stood up for a federal job guarantee. Now I am back to bring to Washington the fight for the social rights that we have neglected at our own peril. We are now at a precipice where our health, our livelihoods, the safety of our environment, and the very continuation of our democracy are in great peril. And it is not enough to simply turn Georgia blue. We cannot succumb to political cowardice and simply put old wine in new bottles. We have to break the mold. And the mold consists in giving the genuine solutions to the converging crises we face. And these solutions are actually at the core of a tradition within the Democratic Party that came to the fore in 1944 when FDR addressed Congress for the last time and called for a new Bill of Rights. And this was reiterated by Martin Luther King in his last year when he noted that without a job and income, one has neither life, liberty, nor the ability to pursue happiness. And he advanced the Poor People's Campaign, which had as its anchor a federal job guarantee. That platform of a social bill of rights anchored in a federal job guarantee has subsequently been completely ignored by Democrats, not to mention Republicans. And now it is crucial that we bring it back to the center of our political conversation. I am here to bring it to your attention and push for it in Washington. We have to begin with a federal job guarantee to wipe out unemployment and poverty income. We need to advance to ensure that healthcare really is a right. And that means not just relying on Obamacare, which did not do the job, but move to Medicare for all. We need to secure the health of our planet with a Green New Deal that achieves 100% green energy by 2030. We need to balance the playing field between employer and employee, which I'm afraid Democrats have failed to do. We need to ensure that there are union elections in all enterprises with multiple employees. We need to have 50% of corporate board seats filled by employees so that no longer will corporations with impunity put work abroad, dismember corporations, and despoil our communities. We need to balance work and family and really stand up for family values and for true reproductive freedom, which requires that we have paid family leave, paid 9-month paternal leave, free public child and elder care, $900 child allowances to wipe out childhood poverty. We need now more than ever to ensure everyone has a decent roof over their heads. And that means by securing a decent income for everyone with a federal job guarantee, we can have a permanent ban on evictions, foreclosures, and utility turnoffs with mandatory payment rescheduling, and we can ensure that we can shelter in place at a time of pandemic. We need to remake our educational system now more than ever. We need to obviously decrease the size of classes, particularly to deal with the pandemic. We need to increase teacher salaries, starting at $60, and we need to move to secure all our rights by ensuring that our system of justice is no longer a big toll road. To do that, we need legal care for all, which will, like Medicare for all, allow everyone to be able to have equal resources in defending themselves in both civil and criminal cases, and thereby we can stand up for all of our rights. And we can fund all of these measures, which represent a birth of freedom. Well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Winfield. You'll have some time to talk later. I appreciate your passion. So we will start with the questions. The first question, we were going to start with Ms. James, but she's not on the call, so we will start with Ms. Johnson-Shealey. The very first question is, what is your solution to the healthcare crisis in this country? So Ms. Johnson-Shealey, please tell us what your solution is.
Again, good evening, everyone. My solution is Medicare for all. I am a progressive Democrat, and I do stand on the platform where we have comprehensive health coverage, free at the point of service, no networks, no premiums, no deductibles, no copays, dental, hearing, vision. I want to tell you guys a story. This just happened to me. I have been traveling around the state of Georgia for the whole month of August. I had a little small RV and I went around the state. I traveled 3,600 miles. Halfway through my trip, I fell in a hole and sprained my ankle. I knew I was injured, but I knew I had to stay on the trail, but I knew I was really injured. My ankle kept swelling. So when I got back here to Atlanta, I went to the doctor, went to the orthopedic. And I can tell you, that, let me just be very candid and open and honest, that my insurance alone, not including my family, my part alone for my health insurance is $500 a month. And I'm healthy, no pre-existing conditions, I'm healthy, but my insurance is through the roof, $500 a month. So I get to the doctor's office and I needed a brace. The brace alone was almost $100 that was not covered by my insurance. So I had to pay for the brace. Now I paid for this insurance every month and still this brace was not covered. I got to the desk and they said that, well, you didn't meet your deductible, so you're gonna have to pay for your visit today as well. So before I left there, I ended up spending $300 before I left the office, in addition to the fact that my insurance is already $500 a month. That is not affordable even for me. So I'm very passionate about the fact that we need Medicare for all. Healthcare is a right. It is absolutely not a privilege. And I want to make sure that it is something that anybody that goes to the doctor, that everybody you can be seen no matter whether you can pay for it or not. So I am a huge proponent for Medicare for all. So that is my solution.
Thank you. Mr. Lieberman, same question.
Yeah, and Tamara, as you probably know, I follow you on Facebook, and I'm glad your ankle's okay. I saw you document that injury as it was happening, and you know what? I have my insurance also, just me, over $500 a month through Obamacare. Thank God for Obamacare, as well as a small business person with a pre-existing condition, asthma. Lord knows what it would be otherwise, and it's atrocious that the Republicans are trying to throw millions upon millions of people off their health insurance by refusing to cover pre-existing conditions. There is a poverty death penalty in America right now, which has become even more graphic during this time of COVID. Statistics show this. It's terrible. The top 20% of Americans by income, on average, live 13 years longer than the bottom 20% of Americans by income. You know, how much money you make in this country, yeah, obviously it'll have an impact on how many luxuries and whatever you can get in life. It should not have an impact on how many years you live in life. And we need to address that. We haven't done enough yet. So yes, I'm in favor of building upon Obamacare with a public option that will bring more affordability and quality competition to the marketplace. I think will be very popular. I'm in favor of reducing the Medicare eligibility age to 60, as Joe Biden is. I'm also in favor of the federal government picking up the cost of Medicaid, whether your governor is a knucklehead, as ours is, or not. Someone shouldn't live in Georgia and not be able to get coverage for something that's just standard coverage, you know, a 6-hour drive away in Virginia, for example, where there is Medicaid expansion. We need Medicaid across the board in this country. It can't depend on where you live as to whether you live. I'm also in favor of prescription drug importation of safe prescription drugs from other countries, and greater regulation on generic drug pricing and the pricing that the pharmaceutical companies put on their drugs here in the US. That should be pegged to an international index of what people are paying around the world, so American consumers don't get screwed, frankly, paying the entire freight for the research and development of the drug companies. But look, we cannot have people dying in this country because they don't have enough money. We just can't. I don't know anyone who has a notion of what the safety net is that would say that's okay. The safety net in this country needs to provide medical coverage, whether you've got money, whether you've got a job or not, because we are all humans and we all deserve that basic decency as human beings from our government.
Thank you. Mr. Tarver, what would you do about the healthcare crisis in this country?
Thank you. As I indicated during my opening, my family has believed that there was a healthcare crisis in this country for decades. And I agree with Matt that nobody in this country should die or lose their life because of a lack of money, because of poverty, or because of the way that they look. We're all dealing with the COVID-19 infection, the pandemic right now. It has contributed to the healthcare crisis that existed prior to the global pandemic being made aware to all of us. As Georgia's U.S. Senator, I too would support the Affordable Care Act. I know it's not perfect, but it's something that's in place now to help Americans. As we've seen during this COVID-19 period, thousands, probably millions of people have had to rely on the Affordable Care Act after losing their jobs and losing their ability to fund private insurance to no fault of their own. I would also support the expansion of Medicaid for those who do not have or cannot afford health insurance. And that's something that has not been done in our state. Additionally, I will author, as a U.S. Senator, I will author legislation to provide money for rural hospitals and for ensuring adequate health care in rural communities. I would aggressively promote collaboration to identify effective strategies that can be shared with the 148 of Georgia's 159 counties that are currently medically underserved. Support for rural hospitals and the medically underserved will significantly improve maternal mortality. Georgia has one of the highest rates of maternal mortality in the nation. A Black woman in Georgia is 3 to 4 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related complications. Moreover, recent data shows that 60% of maternal deaths in Georgia are preventable. Finally, I would also address the role that implicit bias plays in the care provided to Black women by supporting the Maternal Care Act that was sponsored by Senator Kamala Harris. If passed, this bill would not only address implicit bias in the care provided to women, but it would also extend Medicaid for women across the country. And also, because many of our homeless and those who are in our court system and our prisons suffer from some form of mental illness or addiction, I would also sponsor legislation that restores funding for mental health and addiction treatment services. I think that's long overdue. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Winfield, same question.
Okay. Thank you. Obamacare, for all the improvements it wielded, is insufficient to secure healthcare as a right because it has not contained the costs. Our healthcare costs per capita are twice as much as any developed nation. There are still tens of millions of people who have no health insurance. There are many more who have health insurance but cannot afford to use it because of copays and deductibles. And now tens of millions more are losing their insurance because they're losing their jobs through the mishandling of the pandemic and the economic crisis we're undergoing. The real solution is Super Medicare for All, which provides complete coverage for all necessary medical care, including physical, mental, dental, and long-term care, with no copays, no deductibles, and no premiums. And that includes covering abortions and reproductive health care, and also the healthcare needs of every resident in this nation, including undocumented people. There are 4 decisive advantages to the Super Medicare for All. First of all, it provides the same quality care and coverage for everyone. Secondly, it provides maximum freedom where you can go to any healthcare provider, which is certainly not the case under private insurance programs. Thirdly, it gets rid of all the inflated overhead costs of a proliferation of competing for-profit insurance plans with all their advertising costs, the bloated salaries of CEOs, the shareholder dividends, etc. In addition, with a single-payer system, we the people are in the strongest position to negotiate with United Force to keep healthcare costs in check, keep pharmaceutical prices in check, bring them down to the prices that prevail everywhere else in the world, which means we can cut our healthcare costs in half, save $1.7 trillion, And we can fund whatever we need to fund to support super Medicare for all by having fair taxation, which can entirely put the burden on the top 10% of wealth and income, who control 80% of our national wealth, which is the greatest accumulation of wealth in human history. Now we need to do this more than ever because we cannot contain the pandemic if everyone cannot obtain the healthcare, the diagnoses, the treatment, the vaccines they need, with money providing no blockage to being able to have a healthy life. And the fact that we have this disgraceful longevity gap between rich and poor is something for which we should all be ashamed. And now we can end it once and for all with Medicare for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jackson, what would you do about the healthcare crisis in this country? You are muted.
Okay, sorry. I would say the first step in solving the healthcare crisis is recognizing that healthcare is a basic human right and not a privilege. One should not have to choose between getting food, getting other essential services, or getting access to healthcare. As the preliminary plan, I would support expansion of the Affordable Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare, to provide coverage for millions of people that have been excluded. Georgia currently has a coverage gap of over 470,000 people. And the expansion of Medicaid in this case would address that need, as well as provide assistance for behavioral health issues regarding mental illness and substance abuse. It would also help save our rural hospitals and create employment opportunities. I think it's important to note that currently Georgia has requested a federal waiver to reshape health insurance in Georgia. And it's in two parts. One is health reinsurance, which would reduce the premiums in areas of the state that are currently very high. And if that is approved, it would go into effect in 2022. The second part of Kemp's plan is something called Georgia Access. And I believe that that is problematic because it basically would eliminate the enrollment platform that everyone has come to know of healthcare.gov, and it would force Georgians to rely on profit-driven insurance companies and web brokers without any type of guarantee that they would get access to quality services and programs. So that would be just in terms of getting us started. But ultimately, I would support looking at ways of providing true universal health care. You know, the US currently has the highest spending, but some of the worst health outcomes compared to other high income countries. It could be some variation of Medicare for all or some other program. What it is called is not as important as what it would accomplish. The fundamental objective of universal health care is that it addresses the issues of access, quality, the cost, as well as the care of those who are disadvantaged. We must remember that those with resources already have access to the care that they want or need. But action can be taken now by Georgians regarding the current plan that's pending by going to coverga.org to comment on the Kemp plan by September 16th. This is an opportunity for local citizens to be involved and have a say of what is currently being proposed to cover us while we work on these other policies and programs that are going to be more expansive and covering the basic healthcare needs of all Georgians. Thank you.
Thank you. So our second question is, what should Congress, meaning Senate and Congress, do to address racial injustice? And it is just a coincidence that Ms. Johnson-Shealey is the first to answer this question.
Thank you. Again, thank you guys for hosting this event tonight. So the question is, what should Senate and and the House do to address racial justice in this country? I'm an activist first, so y'all say this with me and you can say it out loud in your own homes, but Black lives matter. Black lives matter. And I'll say it again, Black lives matter. You have people across the country protesting in the streets. We have a problem in this nation that we've had for a very long time. And this problem stems from slavery, Black codes, Jim Crow, convict leasing, no Green New Deal, no GI Bill, redlining, war on drugs, mass incarceration, and now COVID-19. We have a history in this country that we have to address and we have to change. So I'm very bold with my agenda, and I talk about reparations, and I'll talk about that with the next question more in detail. But I talk about reparations and the repair that needs to happen for Black America. We can't be shy about it. Trump has brought out the worst in this nation, and we have to address it head on. So I have a very bold agenda when it comes to reparations. We have a broken criminal justice system in this country. I'll tell you, traveling around Georgia, there was one early on in my travels, I passed 3 prisons in one day. And I was not intending to be where these prisons were, but I passed 3 prisons in one day. I went over to Lakeland, Georgia this past weekend. And as I was driving into the community, into the neighborhood, literally a neighborhood, there's a prison that sits in Lakeland, in the neighborhood, literally across the street from people's homes, literally. And I was floored. So we have to address the broken criminal justice system. We have to create opportunities. We have to do skill. We have to be intentional about skill and job training. We need prison reform. There's a lot of mental illness. There's a lot of addiction. People have issues that we need to address beyond incarceration. So I don't believe locking people up and throwing them away is the answer. I want us to abolish this prison system we have here. And I want us to address the issues, the root of the issues when it comes to our citizens here in this country. And I'll stop there.
Thank you. Mr. Lieberman, what should Congress do to address racial injustice?
Yeah, well, first, as they would say in the Senate, I would like to incorporate Ms. Johnson-Shealey's remarks into my remarks for the record, a big ditto on what she just said. But let me go back for a second to what Reverend Warnock supporters have said about me before getting to the national agenda. I'd like to specifically call on Reverend Warnock tonight to renounce and separate himself from his prominent supporters' statements saying, frankly, that I'm racist. It doesn't matter if it's politically advantageous because I may be doing better in the polls than they'd like, but it's utterly baseless, and it's so much not what we need. The American people want to be able to have difficult, good faith, open conversations about issues that matter, like racial relations, like social justice, like so many other things we have to work on. I've invited the president of the Georgia NAACP, who's one of those who's had these critical remarks directed towards me, to an open digital town hall to talk about this stuff and talk about the real issues that the people that we care about are dealing with every day. And so I hope we can get that together, but I want to call on Reverend Warnock to renounce what his supporters have said. It's not what people want. We don't need to be calling allies racist. That's not going to help any cause. We need all of us to fix these problems, and my sleeves are rolled up and ready to go. Look, we have an opportunity gap in this country. If you're white and upper middle class or better, it's hard to fail. If you're black or white, for that matter, and middle class or lower, it's hard to succeed now. And we've got to change that. And so much of it is baked in. There are structural, systemic issues in our biggest systems, our economic systems, justice systems, education systems, healthcare systems, all of which create terrible slants against community of color and against people who have been living with generational poverty. We need to break those systems so we can break those cycles. And I am absolutely committed to doing that. The time is now. There's no one simple fix. We need to invest in communities of color. So in all these things, I think one of the things Joe Biden proposes tripling the Title I budget for
30 seconds.
to improve the quality of instruction and education in schools in economically disadvantaged areas. We need to change the sentencing parameters so that people aren't locked up for nonviolent crimes the way they are now. There are so many things that we can do that Democrats will do when we get in there. And I look forward to being a part of those efforts and right in the middle of them.
Thank you. Mr. Tarver, same question.
Thank you. I particularly appreciated this question because I think it recognizes that not in spite of what has been said for decades in this country, there is an opportunity for legislative solutions to racial injustice. I believe that Congress should take immediate action to end decades of unaddressed systemic racism, which has been woven into the fabric of our culture for too long. In today's climate, when we hear the phrase racial injustice, we immediately think of Ahmaud Arbery from Brunswick and his murder at the hands of vigilantes. We think of George Floyd from Minnesota, or Rashad Taylor from Atlanta, Jacob Blake, who was shot 7 times, but fortunately is still alive, and then Breonna Taylor, who was killed in Kentucky. And those are all significant events that relate and provide the core to the current Black Lives Matter movement, which I think is very legitimate and should be supported. However, systemic racism goes beyond criminal justice and police brutality and extends to our schools, it extends to our healthcare, it extends to the availability of safe housing, and it also extends to the compensation paid by employers. As Georgia's next U.S. Senator, I will support the restoration of the Voting Rights Act, including Section 5. I will advocate for equal pay for women of color, and I will also advocate for the elimination of economic disparity in our education system. The quality of one's education should not be determined by what zip code they live in or how much money their parents make. And most importantly, I would support legislation to end qualified immunity. It is time that we get to a point in this country where we can hold our law enforcement, those who are responsible for protecting and serving us, responsible and accountable when they misbehave, when they engage in excessive force, when they cause the death or serious injury to another citizen. And so I applaud the first Congressional District Democrats for recognizing that we need legislative action, and we need legislative action quickly to address racial injustice in this country. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Winfield, same question, please.
Sure. I mean, all the achievements of the civil rights movement may have lifted much, if not all, of the official legal discrimination that has deprived people of color, but it has not lifted the resulting disadvantage. And because we allow all the benefits we need to exercise our freedoms in almost all cases to depend upon how much wealth we have, that has in a way led to an operation of an ongoing systemic racism, which bases itself on 2 factors. First, there is this huge income and wealth racial gap that extends also to health and property, housing, the quality of housing, how much education one has, and so forth. And on the other hand, we have our systems which are operating in such a way that you do not have access unless you have sufficient money. And as a result, independently of any racist attitudes, we find that the racial disadvantage gets perpetuated and intensified. Now, to eliminate that, to nullify the present wealth and income racial gap and all the other gaps that pertain to blockages of opportunity, we have to go to the Senate and Congress. And first of all, we have to enact legislation to wipe out the disproportionate unemployment of African Americans. And we do that by eliminating unemployment, period, for good, with a federal job guarantee. We need to eliminate the disproportionate poverty income of African Americans by eliminating poverty income for good with two measures. One is a new federal fair minimum wage, not the so-called living wage of $15 an hour, which is a poverty wage and an invitation to homelessness, because you need at least $20 an hour in any place in America to live decently. We need a fair minimum wage starting at 20, keeping pace with inflation and the rising wealth of our nation. And with that, we are in a position where we can also have equivalent replacement income for those on disability and Social Security retirement, so that we eliminate the disproportionate impoverishment of disabled and retired African Americans. We need equally to eliminate the disproportionate gap in healthcare and longevity of African Americans with Medicare for All, which provides equal health services of every kind without any need for payments up front. And we have to do the same thing with regard to education, with federal funding of public schools, with free tuition and stipends at post-secondary institutions, annulling student debt. We also have to think, moreover, of ending mass incarceration. And we can do that by legalizing personal use of drugs, by letting everyone out of prison who are there for drug sentences of that sort. We need also to eliminate cash bail, which is pretrial punishment of the poor. And we need to stop taking away the right to vote from prisoners. That amounts to a political disenfranchisement of 6.5 million people. And they're partially people of color. And that also means they're not serving on juries in a fair way, because jury service depends upon being on the voter rolls. So these are key elements.
Thank you. Ms. Jackson, what do you believe Congress should do to address racial injustice?
All right, thank you. So the question of what Congress should do to address racial injustice is a very challenging one. And it's challenging from the perspective that over the years, all types of legislation has been passed, starting with the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. Then we had the Civil Rights Act of 1870, 71, 75, 1957, 60, and 64. There is the Voting Rights Act of 1965, another Civil Rights Act in 1968, and voting rights amendments in 1970, 75, and 82. We have a Civil Rights Restoration Act of 1987, the Fair Housing Amendments of 1988, the Civil Rights Act of 1991, the Voting Rights Act of 2006, and currently pending is the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Act of 2020. So as you can see from this brief listing, a lot of legislation has been passed over the last 155 years since 1865. But here we are in 2020, still looking at how do we address racial injustice in this country. As one of the other panelists has said, often when we talk about or think about racial injustice, the images of police killings come to mind. And as horrific as those images are, unfortunately, they are only part of the overall picture. So how do we get a different result? At this point, we need something more than just another piece of legislation. We need something that would fundamentally transform the missing parts of the Declaration of Independence of 1776, when it was boldly stated that all men are created equal. But we know that that did not include all men or any women for that matter. So I would propose looking at House Resolution 40, which was introduced in January of 2019, calling for the creation of a commission to study and develop reparation proposals were African Americans. The first time that a House resolution on this issue was introduced was in 1989. And it wasn't until 30 years later, on Juneteenth of last year, that the first hearing was actually held. So a concrete approach would be for Congress to establish the commission and set a reasonable time frame for a final report to be done. It doesn't need to extend 10 years, 20 years. There's a lot of research that has already been done about possible solutions to address the disparities that exist as relates to housing, education, employment, access to credit, healthcare, criminal justice, and so on. So that is where I would start, not just introducing another piece of legislation, because we have a long history that laws by themselves have not been sufficient to do the job. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final question is one that is difficult to answer because we are passionate about many issues, but tell us, what is the one issue that you are most passionate about? And we will start with Mr. Lieberman.
Yes, it is. It is difficult to issue and answer, and you've heard the passion tonight from all of us. I tend to be a little bit low key, so I hope the passion has come out of me. We need to make a change now. God, we need to make a change. In addition to all the issues we've talked about, I want to, so maybe this is a little bit of a curveball, but the thing that I feel most passionate about, and this is a promise that I know I can keep and will keep regardless of any external factor, is constituent service. You know, all these issues we've talked about, we're at a time in our history where really the future of our country truly is on the line. And I think all of us here are on the right side of history and pushing in the right direction. The other part of being your senator is being your guy in Washington. And if, God forbid, if Mitch McConnell and the Republicans are still in charge of the Senate, you know, Democrats in the Senate are almost like professional tweeters. There's nothing to do. And shame on them to some extent. Here's my promise to you. If I'm your senator, whether we're in the majority and I've got a lot of other great things to do, or whether we're in the minority and still nothing is going on, I will commit more of my office's resources to constituent service here in Georgia. I will spend more of my time visiting communities here in Georgia than any senator that we've had in recent memory. There's so much cynicism about politics. There's so much feeling that you send people to Washington and good intentions get lost along the way and no one does anything. I promise you that I will be an advocate, the likes of which you have not seen before, helping you deal with the federal government, helping Georgia get what it deserves, and helping Georgians get what they deserve in their interactions with the federal government. I am passionate about the prospect of truly being your guy in Washington.
Thank you. Mr. Tarver, which one issue are you most passionate about?
You know, that's a very, very difficult question because I'm passionate about many issues affecting Georgians. And so it's hard to pick out one, but there are some that are front and center right now and at this point in our history. And one of those relates to unintended consequences that may have been brought about by action taken by our state and federal legislators. But one of the things that I encountered while serving as United States Attorney was I became very interested in the issue of mass incarceration and the impact that it was having on the African American community. As a brand new U.S. Attorney, I learned right away that 80% of what we do at the federal law enforcement area involves the prosecution of some type of criminal code violation, and that about 80% of those folks prosecuted are Black Americans or brown-skinned people, and that as a result of that came about as a result of what happened in the 1990s when we all embraced this notion of tough on crime, and not knowing that by getting tough on crime in the way that it was done, by taking discretion away from our judges, by instituting mandatory minimum sentences that it was going to result in the mass incarceration that we see today, where over 2.3 million Americans are incarcerated in federal and state prisons. And that as a result of that, there are roughly 6,000 former inmates who are released to communities every year who need employment, who need a way to re-enter society, and that there's no mechanisms, no structure that will allow them to do that. I think that it's essential that we start looking at the issue of mass incarceration, that we consider the impact that it's had on the African American community, on the African American family. In this country today, only 1 in 4 African American families have both the mother and father there. And many believe that that's directly related to the mass incarceration that we're experiencing right now, and the number of people, number of African Americans who are incarcerated. When you consider that of that 2.3 million Americans who are behind in federal and state prisons, that about 75 to 78% of those are Black or brown. So that's an issue of importance to me, and I would certainly do all I could to, once I become Georgia's next U.S. Senator, to address the issue of mass incarceration. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Winfield, what are you most passionate about?
I'm most passionate about a policy that I'm very sad to say is not being advocated by any Senate candidate except myself. And that is a genuinely transformative policy of a federal job guarantee that wipes out unemployment and poverty income. It is something that really provides the anchor of the social and economic emancipation that we as a nation need to undergo. It, on the one hand, ensures that we eliminate poverty and joblessness by government coming in and putting anyone to work who needs a job. It allows us to put people to work doing the things that we need to have both produced and provided that the market is not. Now we need an army of contact tracers. Now we need to make investments in a green infrastructure. Now we need to bring broadband to everyone. Now we need to increase our school and medical facilities, provide care and public transportation to all. The federal job guarantee mobilizes us to be able to do that. It also is great for the economy because it produces maximum consumer demand. Everyone will have income. And when I say income, I'm talking about it being associated with a fair minimum wage, starting at $20, adjusted upwards with inflation and the growth of our national wealth. So we diminish the growing inequality in wealth and income. It also lifts the fear of firing because with a federal job guarantee, you know that you can stand up for your rights at the workplace against sexual harassment, racial harassment, employer bad conduct. You can fight for your rights as an employee. In addition, it is crucial to ending mass incarceration and putting an end to the school to prison pipeline. Because with the federal job guarantee, every young person knows they have a meaningful job awaiting them at a fair wage. Everyone coming out of prison, let alone being drawn into activities that might lead them to prison, know they have a legal way of earning a living. It is crucial for making a Green New Deal because with a federal job guarantee, not only can we put millions to work making the transition to green energy, but we can guarantee anyone in the fossil fuel sector that when we shut that down, they will have jobs awaiting them. The same thing applies to Medicare for all. We can ensure that anyone in the for-profit insurance industry, health insurance industry, will have jobs awaiting them. It is crucial also for having comprehensive immigration reform, because with this job guarantee and fair minimum wages, no one will feel that providing legal status to the undocumented will in any way undermine their livelihood or lower wages. It is also crucial for reproductive freedom because it ensures that everyone will have that economic security with which they can have the family they want. It is a genuinely transformative measure. It's time for the Democratic Party to go back to this policy, which FDR put on the table, that MLK put back on the table.
Stop, please.
Thank you. Ms. Jackson, which issue are you most passionate about?
Okay, well, I am passionate about people. That's the reason why I decided to become an attorney and later decided to go into public service. But the issue that I wanted to talk to you about tonight was really my passion about the desire of establishing a truly representative democracy and economy. And what does that actually mean, you might wonder? Well, I'm glad you asked. We're supposed to be a government by the people, of the people, and for the people, but we know that too often that is not really the case, that our elected representatives are often determined by big money interests that decide who the candidate should be, and they then get to influence the type of legislation that is introduced and then becomes law. I mean, just how crazy is it that now the average salary of the CEO of a major corporation is 300 times that of the average worker. In 1978, it was only 30 times more, and that's enough, but just it has grown tremendously over that time. And guess who pays a higher percentage of their salary in taxes? You're right, it's the worker. So the CEOs have been able to benefit tremendously by the various tax reform bills that have been introduced, starting with the Ronald Reagan administration and continues today. The average worker has not seen any level of benefits in their regard in terms of being able to increase their standard of living. So the challenge is how to rethink the economy and restructure it so that we eliminate the vast disparities that currently exist and have only been exacerbated by the upheaval caused by the pandemic. On the local level, there needs to be more community engagement around policy issues related to public safety, education, housing options, zoning, business development, as well as the environment, just to name a few. We often overlook the local wisdom of people who are dealing with these issues on a day-to-day basis. I believe that a more informed, engaged, and diverse citizenry is an essential component of a representative democracy. So I'm interested in lending my support for initiatives that would be more supportive of the interests of working people. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Johnson-Shealey, which issue are you most passionate about?
I told y'all I was an activist, right? So y'all say this again. Say this with me. Reparations. 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 I'm most passionate about reparations and the repair that needs to happen for Black America in this country. Richard, you said that a federal job guarantee. Let me push back on you with that, because a job and an income does not close the racial wealth gap that exists in this country. Ms. Deborah, respectfully, you said that HR 40 was the solution. HR 40 is a study. As I said in my previous answer to my other question, we have slavery, black codes, Jim Crow, convict leasing, no Green New Deal, no GI Bill, redlining, war on drugs, mass incarceration, now COVID-19. It's a study. We don't need any more studies. We're real clear about the problems that exist in this country and the change that needs to happen. So my solution and what I'm most passionate about is reparations. And reparations will benefit us all. I'll get to that in just a second. But by 2053, the data has shown and proven by 2053, now with COVID, that's probably gonna happen a lot sooner. But by 2053, Black America will have zero net wealth. A rising tide, Richard, does not lift all boats. We're gonna still be on the bottom. We gotta have reparations in this country if we wanna turn things around. Black Americans, we're not looking for a handout. We're looking for opportunities, and we're looking for what's rightfully owed to us as descendants of slavery in this country. We built this country on our backs. So I'm most passionate about reparations, and I have a plan for it to create an agency, just like we have the VA. I call this the RA, the Reparations Administration. where we, first of all, we need to establish who is owed reparations in this country. And those of us who are descendants of slavery, America owes. Inside of this administration, we're gonna create our own database where we're gonna collect, manage, and maintain a registry of who we are. America knows who we are. We're not a lost people. So reparations, I talk about cash payment. I talk about low to no interest home loans, low to no interest small business loans, government set-asides, tuition reimbursement, debt cancellation, college student loan debt cancellation, and funding for our HBCUs. So I'll say it again, reparations. I'll say it again, reparations. I'll say it a third time, reparations. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you to all of the candidates for well thought out answers to our questions. I wish we would have had more time to ask more questions, but everybody can visit your websites or follow you on social media to learn more about your campaigns. And we'll begin our closing statements now, and we'll start with Mr. Tarver. Is Mr. Tarver still on the call?
I am. I was just muted.
Okay.
I apologize.
Okay.
I'd like to take a moment to thank the First Congressional District of Georgia Democrats for hosting this event. It's a great opportunity for us to get our messages out to the voters of Georgia. And I think that events like this provide a valuable service, not only to the candidates, but to the state as well. The last 4 years have shown us that things have changed quite a bit in our country. But there's some things that we know. We know that elections have consequences. We know that experience matters and the lack thereof matters as well. We also know that Georgians want bold, experienced leadership in Washington. I have a demonstrated record of leadership and service for Georgia and that uniquely positions me to provide representation for Georgia in the U.S. Senate. I was President Obama's United States Attorney for the 43 county South Georgia, Southern Georgia area. During that time, I had an opportunity to protect the constitutional rights of all Georgians who lived in that district. I believe that we need to look at the experience of the candidates on the ballot on November the 3rd. I'm the only candidate that has been elected to the legislature. I've cast votes in the legislature. In fact, one of the votes that I cast related to Georgia's current Stand Your Ground law, which I voted against because it provided for deadly force, the use of deadly force in public places. I'm the only one that has represented individuals in courts and can see and can tell you the impact that our current system has on our Black community and on the contribution to mass incarceration. This is probably the most significant election of my lifetime and certainly the most significant election of your lifetime. We're in a fight for our democracy, and I would urge you to look at our qualifications, to choose experience over celebrity, choose experience over popularity. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Winfield?
Thank you. I want to invite everyone who's listening to this event to check out my platform on my campaign website, winfieldforsenate.com, to listen to my podcast, America Unchained, and to look at a book-length exposition of my policies and how they are practical and can be funded by looking at my book, Democracy Unchained. I am advocating the job guarantee social rights agenda that provides the solutions to the crises we are undergoing. It nullifies the role of wealth in blocking our opportunity, and it does so on a permanent basis because rights never expire. And it's crucial to recognize how our opportunities are also blocked in terms of our political participation. I am not one of the 4 establishment candidates in the Senate race who was awash with money and press consideration. And needless to say, the pandemic, by suspending most, if not all, in-person events, is making it more and more difficult for the voters to find out who the candidates are and what they stand for, or for the candidates to get their way to their policies to the public. But we have a systemic problem. If you're an employee, you face 3 strikes in trying to run for office. To do so, you have to quit your job. If it's a serious race, you have no income, you lose your benefits, you don't have a job waiting for you. We have to change that and make the right to run for office something that really applies to all of us. We also have to keep money out of the political process. We cannot let someone like Kelly Loeffler use any of her private money to bankroll her campaign. We need to ensure that our government allows every candidate to get their message to the electorate and allows the electorate to be properly informed about what is up for grabs in this election. Otherwise, even if you can overcome the massive voter suppression that is facing us, if voters don't know what their candidates stand for, their right to vote is empty. We have to change that. And that's part of what it means to pay attention to what your candidate stands for, because we need to transform our entire political system before it's too late. We are on the cliff of a precipice. This is a moment of truth. You need to get to the polls and make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jackson.
All right. Thank you once again to the 1st Congressional District for hosting this forum. So in the beginning, I said that this election is about deciding the future direction of the country. It presents an opportunity to not keep doing things the same way we have always done them. We can work to create a new normal that respects, protects, and supports the basic human dignity of all people, regardless of their economic status, race, religion, gender, or immigration status. All of us has the potential to make a meaningful contribution to society. We just need to make sure that the right supports and assistance are in place. We also have to be willing to address the issue of equity and justice if we want real change in this country. We cannot be distracted by the fear-mongering and hatred rhetoric that is currently taking place. As an elected official, an attorney, and someone who has studied as well as implemented policies, I am the best choice for the U.S. Senate. I will represent the interests of Georgians faithfully and fearlessly. Please visit deborahforgeorgia.com for more information. I ask for your support to help build a Georgia movement that is representative of the people. Together, we can win and make a difference. Again, I thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson-Shealey.
Kelly Loeffler has to go. Kelly Loeffler has to go. I am Tamara Johnson-Shealey, your candidate for the United States Senate. We can't keep sending the same people to Washington. Politicians beholden to big donors, big corporations, and political favors. We have enough of them. We have to send people to Washington who are going there to work for you, who will meet your demands and fulfill your expectations. Politicians that are different, politicians who are different, who think different. You have a lot of great candidates to choose from, but I am your candidate, Tamara Johnson-Shealey, for the United States Senate. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lieberman.
Thank you. Thank you, 1st Congressional District, for this opportunity. It was great. I've been happy to be with you. My email is matt@liebermanforsenate.com. So really, truly, don't hesitate to email me with any thoughts, questions, input you might have. I value it. This is no ordinary time that we're living in. And it would be nice if we had something better than ordinary in our politics, but instead we have something way, way, way worse than ordinary. And when we talk about government being, let's be clear, the government, the structures, the systems, they've been there for a couple centuries. It's the people who aren't getting the job done. We need new leadership. We need fearless leadership. The folks who are here tonight, all of us, I believe, if elected, will go to Washington and fight just for you. That cannot be said of Doug Collins, Kelly Loeffler, or Reverend Warnock for that matter, all of whom owe a great deal to power centers in Washington and Atlanta for their very presence in this race. I promise you that if you elect me to be your next United States Senator, I will be nobody's man but yours. I will fight for you and only for you. We need to win this. Let's make no mistake. I'm gratified that I've been the front runner and probably amongst the Democrats in probably 2/3 of the polls that have been taken. And I'm confident not only that I will be the best able to beat either Kelly Loeffler or Doug Collins one-on-one in January. We need to win this seat. I'm ready to win this seat and hit the ground running for us, for the people of Georgia. I'm asking for your vote. Truly, as I said before, I want to be your guy in Washington, fighting for you. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, on behalf of the 1st Congressional District Democrats, I want to thank all of the candidates for participating tonight. It is very important that we get to meet you and hear what you have to say. And I wish we had a lot more time to ask you many more questions. I do encourage people to look into the candidates, know who you're voting for. Thank you to Glenn Dems for their work in putting this event together, and to the DPG for providing a platform. And thank you to everybody who was watching tonight. I'm going to turn it over to Julie Jordan with some closing thoughts and a little bit of voter information. So thank you again.
So thank you for everybody joining us tonight. Sorry about the live Facebook page feed, but we will post the recording of this video on social media and also email it out so people who could not attend can watch all of these fabulous candidates get their message out. Also, voters, absentee ballots are going to start getting mailed September 15th. So we've got 2 weeks to get our message out. We've got to, if you haven't requested your absentee ballot application, do so now. If you don't get your ballot in the mail by October 15th, please go to a drop box and drop it off. If you need a ride to the polls or a ride to the drop box, please contact Glenn Dems and we will get you there. This is the most important election of our lives, as most of these candidates said, and we've got to flip Georgia blue. So thank you again for attending tonight, and we look forward to seeing you at the polls.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
All right. Good night, everyone. We appreciate the opportunity. Take care.
Good night. Thank you very much.
Good night, 1st District Democrats. Spread the word.